Chrystia Freeland has always been a terrible choice for anything important in government. She really has never had a real job. She's a finance minister, but has no background whatsoever in financial matters. She's not an economist or an accountant. In fact, her real life has been a disaster. I don't know if you know this, but she went away from Canada for a very long time. She spent some time in the States, and for some reason, someone at the large company Reuters Thomson appointed her to run their big high-tech project called Reuters Next. Hundreds of staff, tens of millions of dollars poured into it. It was going to be their next high-tech thing. She ran it into the ground. She blew millions, tens of millions of dollars. When she was done as their leader, they just shut it down and walked away. Let me quote to you from an incredible recap of it. I think this was in BuzzFeed, which did a story on it. I'm just going to read a couple paragraphs. This is how she ran a company into the ground, but where instead of thinking of the company, think of what she's done in the department she's run. Let me quote. The project decided against using any internal resources. The belief was that they were mired in bureaucracy and they were not the team to build a new vision for editorial, the current Reuters employee said. The decision to hire outside vendors infuriated skeptical Reuters insiders, said yet another former Reuters employee who was involved with the next project. Costs steadily rose with new hires and payments to vendors and consultants as the project dragged on, and the launch date was continually postponed. While earlier articles estimated the cost at around $5 million, sources close to the project said that actual figure was 3 to 4 times that amount, or between $15 and $20 million. Moreover, the first former Reuters employee said that the Activate, that was a consultant they'd hired, was paid $300,000 a month. I won't go on, but you can see a few things. Refusing to take advice from anyone who knows what they're doing, hiring outside contractors and consultants at shocking high prices, not listening to anyone, and then, of course, she just bailed out and walked away as the whole thing crumpled. Imagine putting that woman in charge of anything. I mean, it's like the ArriveCan scandal. They were the past was sending us a warning about the future. Before she destroyed that product, seriously, when she was done with Reuters Next, Reuters just walked away from that crater. They didn't even try and pick up the pieces. Before that, she wrote a pop culture book called Plutocrats, where she pretended to be against the super rich, but she basically fawned over billionaires. It's sort of like Lifestyles at the Rich and Famous. I think that's where she met George Soros, the billionaire leftist. And they sort of had a platonic romance. And Chrystia Freeland was hired as George Soros's official biographer. That was her title until she entered Parliament. She did not disconnect from Soros at all. I don't know if you remember this, but Trudeau was elected in the fall of 2015. His first World Economic Forum meeting was in January 2016. Chrystia Freeland set that all up, and that was the famous meeting with Soros and Trudeau. And the larger version of the photo we always show you, Chrystia Freeland's there too. The three of them, that was the connection between Soros and Trudeau. Anyways, when she came back to Canada to run for Parliament, she had been away for so long, and she bought a house in Toronto for $1.3 million. And this made a little bit of news because it was such an expensive house. Of course, these days, the average house in Toronto is more than $1 million. I didn't find it particularly shocking that a woman in her 40s, married with kids, would buy a house in Toronto that was over $1 million. I have to tell you, that is the average price of a house now. What was bizarre and telling to me is that when she came back to Toronto, this was about 11 years ago, and she bought that house, and both her and her husband were working. I told you some of the projects she was on. She needed her parents to co-sign the loan for her, to co-sign the mortgage. And I'm not making fun of anyone. I mean, I think most people buying a house need help in Canada because houses are so extraordinarily expensive, largely because Trudeau has quadrupled immigration, and it's just supply and demand. If you bring in 2.2 million people last year, which Trudeau did, obviously housing prices are going to go up. So I'm not making fun of people who are having trouble paying their mortgage, but if you are in your 40s and you're working and your husband's working and you came from all these rock star jobs and you can't get a mortgage on your own, what does that say about your own credit, your own ability to save? And this is the person who's becoming finance minister. Anyways, let's take a quick look at the budget. A huge increase in taxes. I bet you didn't see that coming. Capital gains tax. Everyone on the left likes capital gains tax because it socks it to the capitalists. That's a great idea until they all leave and go somewhere else where they can invest and take risks and make money and it won't be taken from them. The carbon tax, of course, is being jacked up again. They have an idea for a tax on vacant land. Apparently that's going to make people spend more money to buy houses. I think that's the theory on it. They say they want to help out millennials and Generation Z, so they're bringing in a vape tax. I think most people using vapes are young kids trying to get off of cigarettes, or even they'll not be young kids. They could be people of any age. You may not like vapes. They may not be cool. They may not be aesthetic, but they're a way for people to get off of cigarettes. Taxing them is only, of course, going to build up a black market. But of course, the liberal thing is all about spending. And this budget is nearly $53 billion more in spending than planned. Of course, they take care of their base, increased spending on the CBC. Of course, they're investing in anti-hate, with over $1 billion in cumulative spending, $1 billion for their anti-hate, which of course is their own form of hate. They're already spending on the Online Harms Act, Bill C-63. It hasn't passed yet, but they're already budgeting for it. That's how certain they are. They're going to pass their censorship bill. They have $1 billion in there for spending on students, including for housing. That's a neat trick, given that about half of the students in this country are foreign, and they're getting help with housing. It's sort of unusual that way. In fact, this budget contemplates $1.1 billion for foreign asylum seekers. We're actually going to spend $1.1 billion. Gee, I wonder if that's going to attract even more migrants to our country.